Good evening, I'm Melanie Brandon. Today is Wednesday, 31st January 2018. This is the SKN News Now Evening Edition. In the headlines tonight, nationally, the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party says the time for talk has ended. The time for action has arrived. Internationally, more than 1,500 children have been orphaned after Somali twin blasts. And in sport, Arsenal have signed Borussia Dortmund striker Pierre Aubameyang for £56 million. We have the details of these stories, Carib update, and the weather all ahead in tonight's edition of SKN News Now. The time for silence and observation has come to an end. 2018 is the year of change. This was essentially the underlying theme of each speaker at the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party's first monthly press conference of the year. While many of the issues raised at the party's press conference today were not new, what was very different was the commitment given by Right Honourable Dr. Denzil Douglas that the opposition will now begin to take definitive action in addressing some of the issues vexing them. These include the relocation of the Bastia High School and the stonewalling of the opposition in the National Assembly by Speaker Michael Perkins. Dr. Douglas continued that this renewed focus on the part of the SKNLP is coming now following an extended period of deep introspection following the 2015 election loss. Part of this process of change and restructuring by the SKNLP, he said in his update, will result in the final slate of candidates who will contest the upcoming elections.
2018, I must emphasize to you, the members of the press, it is the year for change. In keeping with this forward-thinking mandate, the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party has over the past 3 years undergone a period of thorough self-examination. The party has been brutally honest with itself during this period of introspection. As an organization that serves people, we took our time and identified our weak points and our past misjudgments. After a series of painstaking analyses and consultative exercises, we instituted some major changes, all of which will be revealed to the country and the world as we go on. In this vein, I wish to declare that our candidate selection process, for the most part, is completed. 3 out of the 4 new candidates have been identified. The final one should be completed in a week or so. The public announcement of the conclusion of our thorough candidate selection process is at hand, and our party, which is a democratic organization, it will, and also, of course, which monitors the response of our people to our changes. We therefore will bring eventually these matters to our national executive, and we will be finally informed.
The party leader continued that these measures on the part of the SKNLP are necessary if there is to be a return to good governance in St. Kitts and Nevis after what his party views as 3 years of failure by the present administration.
This corruption that we have all spoken to must come to an end. This abuse must come to an end. The narcissistic dictatorship and self-entrenchment and enrichment must come to an end as well. The deception just has to end. A new era of good governance means new freedom of information legislation and an activation of integrity in public life legislation that we passed earlier, but which the government has failed over the last 3 years to move forward. A new era of good governance means good fiscal management and fair and open bidding for government contracts enforced again, every family being equally important and equally valued. Our people's health and well-being will again be first priority, and our youth must be empowered in the way that we have empowered them in the past.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Douglas is calling for the resignation of Honorable Vincent Byron over allegations that an alleged sexual assault occurred in the Attorney General's chambers. This comes as the government continues to keep its silence, either to confirm or deny knowledge of the incident, which was thrown into the public domain during last week's sitting of the National Assembly. Both the Attorney General's chambers and the Office of the Prime Minister have declined to comment on this matter. Dr. Douglas says given the extremely serious nature of the allegation, he's also calling on the Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris, to see to it that an investigation is launched immediately.
This is a very serious matter. Very, very serious matter. In fact, if I were the Attorney General, I would have resigned. Because someone is basically, and I have, put the scandal directly into his chambers. And if up to today he has not yet called for an inquiry in his own chambers, then the country must be asking itself, well, why hasn't the Attorney General carried out an inquiry in his own chambers when the leader of the opposition in the Parliament made that statement? This is a very serious matter. And it's very, very unfortunate that our young women in this country would go to the office of a minister of government or the chambers, I should say, of the legal department of the Attorney General and come out charging that she has been sexually violated. And so one is wondering at this stage why nothing is coming forward from the Attorney General chambers, why nothing is coming forward from the police, the DPP, and why nothing is coming forward from the Prime Minister himself.
Meantime, SKNLP Deputy Leader Dr. Earl Assem Martin says the manner in which the government continues to approach and politicize a number of issues has solidified his belief that the Dr. Timothy Harris-led government is not acting in the best interest of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. He outlined a number of examples to support his claim of government mismanagement and incompetence, including the news in late 2017 that the second cruise ship pier is now set to cost taxpayers almost double what it was projected when the Labour administration left office.
The pier was originally budgeted to cost EC 31 million US dollars. Yet this government decided to discard every single plan that the Labour administration had already set for a new pier and to go a different route. They decided it was wise not only to start from scratch and delay the project by 3 years or more. As a result of their actions, the second pier will now cost the country 48 million US dollars. Or EC 130 million, an increase of 50% over the original price. A grand loan of US $34 million, equivalent to 92 million EC dollars, was taken from the National Bank because our banks must have thought that the cost of construction of 48 million US dollars was completely unjustified. The public should be made fully aware of two important facts regarding this matter as follows. The first are that the repayment of these loans taken to construct this second pier will be solely the responsibility of the St. Christopher E&C Ports Authority, SCASPA. The second is that as a result of SCASPA being hurried into EC $130 million worth of debt, the government is now seeking to privatize SCASPA in an effort to rid itself of this debt and incurred as a direct result of the incompetence, poor fiscal management, and severe lack of foresight.
Dr. Martin, a former Minister of Public Works, again raised the issue of the government's determination to relocate the Bastia High School and repeated the SKNLP's view that the entire saga involving BHS was based on a devastating and now apparently irreversible lie.
Looking at the Bastia High School saga, we see again blinding evidence of the government's incompetence, deceit, and trickery. After all the deceit in trying to convince much of the population that there was something fundamentally wrong with the Bastia High School's original compound, despite numerous reports from top scientific research and testing agencies that indicated the complete opposite. The government has decided to construct a new Bastia High School directly on the top of the island's single largest source of water inside the Bastia Valley National Park, an area protected by legislation. Were this government to repeal that legislation to accommodate a lie, our island will lose the most abundant and longest-serving source of fresh water for years to come due to contamination, heavy metals from school chemistry labs, sewage, and general industrial runoff. To state the obvious, this cannot be allowed to happen in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Without divulging specifics of the argument he will make in his election petition, the Nevis Reformation Party's Roberta Hector has shared some of the concerns over which he felt the need to challenge the outcome of the St. Paul's District 1 Nevis Island election result. In the December 18, 2017 election, incumbent Hector received 585 votes, which was not enough to defeat challenger Spencer Brand's 596 votes. Already extremely close with an 11-vote win for the CCM of that district seat, it was even more tense as a relatively high number of votes were spoilt, 12, with another 3 rejected. Even before the polls closed, there were accusations of irregularities over the manner in which the election in District 1 was conducted. In a public statement on Tuesday afternoon, Mr. Hector finally disclosed some of the issues which he feels compelled legal action to be taken.
On election day, a number of irregularities were recorded by our polling agents. Persons were disenfranchised in that their names were purposely removed from the election register. In addition, persons whose names were not included on the register were allowed to vote in a very arbitrary, capricious, and haphazard manner, contrary to our electoral laws and regulation. I have found, for example, that a dead person voted at the Charleston police station. Persons also voted without proper identification. Further, I must say to you, we were able to uncover a plot by the Concerned Citizens Movement and persons within the electoral office to produce a supplemental list allowing persons who were not included on the register of voters to vote on election day. In fact, at the Methodist Church, a CCM executive member who does not vote in the constituency or at that polling station was allowed inside of the said polling station to give directions to the presiding officer as to who should be allowed to vote.
If the allegations prove accurate, in addition to being a breach of electoral laws, Mr. Hector, an attorney, said it also casts a dark shadow of the Federation's electoral authorities.
This, indeed, goes against the grain of our electoral laws. Those responsible for the administration of our electoral system, it appears they lack the necessary probity, honesty, and integrity that is required to ensure that the elections are free and fair and democratic. The elections have left us with a number of unanswered questions as it relates to the manipulation of the electoral system. Questions that must be answered by the court.
In the 19-page-long application filed with the Nevis Circuit of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, Mr. Hector claims that as many as 34 people in the St. Paul's constituency were not allowed to vote. He also accuses Supervisor of Elections Elvin Bailey and his officers of allowing the election to proceed despite irregularities and outright illegalities. Among the damning accusations of incompetence leveled against Bailey and his office by Hector is that the Electoral Office gave excluded voters little or no notice of their exclusion, and in the case of persons later reinstated, they were not given adequate notice that they had been reinstated. There are only 3 possible outcomes to the petition which Hector's filed. The court can reject it altogether. It can declare Hector winner, which is not unheard of but also not generally done by the courts. Or finally, and most likely if the tide turns in Hector's direction, the court can declare the election in District 1 invalid and void, which would pave the way for a new election in that district. Mr. Hector's petition is not at all unlike the petition filed by now Premier of Nevis, Honorable Mark Brantley, in 2011. At that time, Brantley lost to the NRP's Hensley Daniel in the St. John's constituency. Brantley opposed the outcome as he claimed that more than 200 voters had been illegally removed from the voters list. After months, Justice Lionel Jones ruled that the election results of the St. John constituency were invalid and therefore void, resulting in an election rerun, which Brantley ultimately won. And the adverse effects of climate change diminishing the fisheries sector coupled with a growing demand for marine resources has pushed the St. Kitts Department of Marine Resources to look at aquaculture as a possible solution. Aquaculture is the cultivation of aquatic animals and plants, specifically fish, shellfish, and seaweed in natural or controlled marine or freshwater environments. During the national consultation on the aquaculture sector held yesterday at the NEMA headquarters, experts in the field engaged with community stakeholders on the benefits of pursuing aquaculture. The one-day session gave an overview of aquaculture, a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis of the project, demonstrations, and the costs associated with undertaking the project. According to aquaculture review specialist Dr. Leighton Narine, aquaculture could increase farm production, reap economic benefits, provide alternative employment opportunities and incomes in the Eastern Caribbean small island states, and contribute to food security and food import reduction. Dr. Leighton also explained the Federation imports a high percentage of seafood from both the regional and international markets, which leads to increased cost for seafood products and a heavy reliance on imported goods versus local production. To combat these negatives, he continued that many countries have turned to aquaculture. Meanwhile, hydroponics expert Stuart Laplace says while the initial cost to develop a sustainable aquaculture sector may be high, the machinery has the potential to reap substantial profits over time. He said that the machinery will be introduced to the Federation and will approximately cost $13,000, producing 75 pounds of fish monthly after a 5-month setup period. Lovelace went on that once the setup is complete and the machine begins to yield product, investors can expect a minimum of $2,700 EC profit per month from the production. Stay with us, still straight ahead in this evening's news presentation, International Developments. Somalia has suffered countless bomb attacks over the years, but the twin explosions in Mogadishu 3 months ago were the largest ever, killing more than 500 people. More than 1,500 children became orphans as a result of the attack, in which many of the victims were parents. Famida Miller reports.
Madina Mohammed plays with her 3-month-old grandson Hassan. His grandmother is looking after him because his mother was one of the hundreds killed in the twin bomb attacks in Mogadishu last October. Hassan was just 11 days old when the bombs went off. As well as Hassan's mother, 2 of Madina's other daughters and niece were killed. Their bodies were never found.
The most difficult thing is that I've been left with 20 children to look after. I'm really old now, and I can't provide for them. I can't build them houses. I can't do anything for them. The only way we are surviving right now is money from well-wishers, but it's not enough for all of us.
The truck bomb blast and a second attack later the same day killed 590 people, injured hundreds more, and orphaned at least 1,540 children. In most cases, their extended families are looking after them. No one claimed responsibility for the attacks, but police suspect Al-Shabaab fighters may have planned it. The truck bomb blast completely devastated this area, where a popular hotel once stood.
Since the blast, some business owners have come back, running a makeshift restaurant. Some of the customers here were injured in the explosion, but people here say they want to support the hotel owner. More than that, for them, it's a show of defiance.
Khader Ismail is part of a local fundraising group. As the injured were rushed to hospital, the group began collecting money to help them, families and local businesses affected. $5 million was raised.
This is very remarkable. This city has gone 30 years in this atrocity and this problem. So then people, they get all of them together. Every problem came, who responds is not for the international community or other peoples or other governments. They come, they form their own self, and then they help each other.
Following the explosions, tens of thousands took to the streets, condemning the attacks. Medina and her grandchildren are a small part of a large community of survivors still in recovery. She says despite the pain and loss, all her family can do is move on.
Venezuela's economic and social crisis is fueling a major increase in crime, not just at home, but also in neighboring Colombia. The collapse in Venezuela's currency has made cross-border smuggling a lucrative business for criminal gangs. Alessandro Ramprietti, reporting from Via de Arosa, went on a night patrol with Colombian special forces on the hunt for smugglers.
Shots ring out over the Simón Bolívar bridge dividing Colombia and Venezuela as people dodge and run for cover. In the last 4 months, at least 14 gunfights have erupted in the border town of Villa de Rosario. The gun battles have left 40 people dead as Colombian and Venezuelan crime groups fight for control of the lucrative contraband of goods on this porous, lawless border. The mayor says people are terrified.
We need the national government to wake up about the effects of Venezuela's crisis. We are being told we need to prepare for what will come, but it's not what will come, it's already here.
Since Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro shut down the border last year to all but foot traffic, violence has increased tenfold. Venezuela's hyperinflation is too profitable a temptation for the gangs. In 2 years, the Colombian peso has increased 40 times in value over the Venezuelan bolivar. Cross-border smuggling, once limited to petrol, now extends to scrap metal, fruits, meat, or anything that can fetch 3 times its price in Venezuela. Colombia's response has been increasing police presence on the ground.
We are going to look for trucks full of contraband in this area. Probably informants already warned the smugglers of our presence, so the trucks can be hidden in one of the trails.
In pitch darkness and complete silence, the officers patrol through a maze-like collection of ever-expanding trails. But it's like finding a needle in a haystack.
Colombia's special forces are on the lookout here on the river Táchira, which divides Venezuela from Colombia. This is just one of over 140 known crossings that smugglers use to move goods into Colombia. Of course, it's practically impossible to control all of them, despite the police's best efforts.
But experts say the fight is also undermined by the lack of collaboration between the two countries and exacerbated by persistent corruption.
There's no doubt that the border is being sold to the highest bidder. This area is in the hands of criminal enterprises dedicated to drug trafficking, large-scale smuggling, extortion, kidnapping, human trafficking, and it has been activated by the closure of the border.
The rise in crime is just another side of the increasing economic and social crisis in Venezuela, that has no end in sight.
Still to come this evening, sport, the weather, and Carib update. And in sport this evening, Arsenal have signed Gabon striker Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang from Borussia Dortmund for a club record of £56 million. The Gunners had two bids for Aubameyang rejected by Dortmund before agreeing a fee that eclipses the £46.5 million they paid for Alexandre Lacazette in July. Arsenal said the 28-year-old African Footballer of the Year had joined on a long-term contract. Aubameyang scored 141 goals in 213 games for Dortmund, including 21 in 24 matches this season. But he was suspended by the German club for their match against Wolfsburg on 14th January for missing a team meeting. The forward was also left out of the squad for their next game at Hertha Berlin because club officials felt he was not focused enough, but he played 90 minutes in Sunday's 2-2 draw with Freiburg. After his move to Arsenal was confirmed, Aubameyang called himself a crazy kid in a message to Dortmund fans posted on Instagram, also apologizing for the manner of his departure. Aubameyang, who will wear the number 14 shirt at Arsenal, joined Dortmund from French club Saint-Étienne in 2013. The only major trophy he won at Dortmund was the German Cup in 2017. He was named Bundesliga Player of the Year in 2016 and last season was the German top flight's most prolific scorer with 31 goals. He has played 56 times for Gabon, scoring 23 goals. And with that look at sport, we now have a look at this evening's weather forecast. In the weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis, a cool and dry air mass sitting over the northeast Caribbean tonight and overnight will continue to limit shower activity across the islands. Although some shallow moisture will move into the area tomorrow, the chance of significant shower activity will remain at moderate. Therefore, tonight will be mostly fair, and tomorrow is expected to be partly sunny to cloudy with a moderate or 40% chance of some brief passing showers. Seas are moderate to locally rough with waves of 1.8 to 2.1 meters or 6 to 7 feet. Small craft operators should exercise caution, and a warning is in effect for sea bathers against hazardous swells breaking on the coasts of the islands. Winds are northeasterly to east-northeasterly at 6 to 12 miles per hour tonight and 9 to 18 miles per hour tomorrow. The sea level pressure is 1,014.4 millibars or 29.95 inches. Today's maximum temperature was 27 degrees Celsius or 81 degrees Fahrenheit. The amount of rainfall for the month of January stands at 91.8 millimeters or 3.61 inches. The sun will rise tomorrow at 6:43 a.m. and set tomorrow at 6:06 p.m. And that look at the weather brings us to the end of this evening's NEWSCAST. Now for a recap of today's top stories. Nationally, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party says the time for silence has ended and the time for action has arrived. Internationally, more than 1,500 children have been orphaned after Somalia twin blasts. And in sport, Arsenal have signed Borussia Dortmund striker Pierre Aubameyang for £56 million. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've been your presenter this evening, Ebony Brandon. Still to come, Carib Update.